YouTube Ozico in the Goat House is back, ranking the 32 most underrated players in the NFL. And here's the catch. I picked one from every single team, ranked them from 32 to 1. This is going to be a fun one. Let's do it. 32 of the most underrated NFL players if using one for every single team. Number 32, the Jets don't, at least in my opinion, don't really have anyone that screams like super underrated. I considered their linebackers, Quincy Williams, Jamien Sherwood, not huge names, really good ball players with upside. Sherwood did just get a very surprising contract, but how about the newcomer, corner from the Ravens, Brandon Stephens? Got ripped a little bit by Ravens fans last year. Not really a big name. Probably a lot of people out there that don't really know his name too well, but yeah, he needs to get better, but a young player that's just getting going, and he led the Baltimore Ravens in snaps in terms of from their cornerback room last year. As good as that corner room is, as highly as the Ravens value corners, Stephens played the most out of those guys. So he might be doing something right. It's a really good defense over there. The Jets like him a lot. I think he'll have a chance to start, has some upside. The Texans, I go Kamari Lassiter, their second-year corner, and I think people realize he's good, so I couldn't rank him super on this list. But what I don't think people realize how good he is for just a one-year player so far. And he's really as good as Derek Stingley is. You could argue he's an elite top 3 corner in the NFL. Lassiter, to me, when watching them play, like they're actually a lot closer than you think. So this is a damn good corner that if you need him to, he can line up in the slot, but he's a really solid outside corner for them. So I went with him. To me, the Texans, Nico Collins could be a little underrated, but everyone knows he's really good. They don't really have anyone that's like super obviously underrated. Jalen Petrie possibly. And for the Bengals, kind of a similar situation. I considered putting T. Higgins up here because I think T. Higgins is so damn good, better than people think, kind of, overshadowed by Jamar Chase and then having Joe Burrow. People don't give him the credit he deserves. I think he's closer to a top 10 receiver than people think, but calling him underrated would be a little weird because everyone realizes T. Higgins is ridiculous. Like, he's very good. I went Logan Wilson. I think people understood that he was a very good linebacker the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, and people kind of gone quiet on him as well as the entire Bengals defense. I think he's a really good fit for the Al Golden defense coming up. So I would like to hear a little more chatter about Logan Wilson. Again, he's still got that talent in him. It's not like he's declined or anything. So I went Logan Wilson. For the Raiders, a very under-the-radar, underrated player, Adam Butler, their defensive tackle, just gave him a new contract. He was a bit of a late bloomer. He's starting to take off in his early 30s. So it was very productive for the Raiders last year. Really held it down in the interior defensive line, which is, the Raiders defense is much better than it looks on paper. You look at it in paper last year, it's like Max Crosby and maybe a few other guys, but guys like this are way better than you think, which makes them a better defense than you expected. So Adam Butler, excited to see him play next to Christian Wilkins as long as he's good to go. For the Commanders, their safety, Quan Martin, him coming out of Illinois a couple years ago, it was like, it's a slot corner. How often are you going to use them? And the Washington Commanders have found a home for him at free safety, and of course he can move around a bit, but felt like the bigger name, according to fans, according to people last year, was Jeremy Chin, but Martin didn't really get any love for some reason. He was all over the place, making big-time plays, deep downfield underneath. So, and it's a guy that, they lost Jeremy Chin. They didn't really add anyone significant at safety. They're really trusting their young stud in Quan Martin to kind of carry that group, so it says a lot. Steelers young edge rusher Nick Herbig. I don't think people realize that he was very productive last year. People just don't realize he played quite a bit last year. Alex Highsmith went down, and Herbig did a great job filling in for him. So you just don't hear about that. You didn't hear about that at all. So he's gonna be going back to a rotation piece because Alex Highsmith, you hope is going to play a full season this year along with TJ Watt getting extended, but wasn't talked about enough last year. A solid, possibly high-end rotational edge rusher for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Eagles, interesting one, going Jordan Davis, and why I say it's interesting is because I think a lot of people may actually say, there might be some people out there that say Jordan Davis is overrated because he was this high-profile prospect, and you don't hear his name a ton. People, he's not filling out the stat sheet. To me, people saying that makes me say he's underrated because he is actually very important to this Eagles defense. They stopped the run at such a high level. That's a starting point for me with good defenses. You have to be able to stop the run to be a good defense, at least in my opinion, because it's just such an easy way for teams to beat you, control the clock, and the Eagles have consistently done such a good job with that. And Jalen Carter, Milt Williams, who's now gone, get all the love. But how about Jordan Davis, plug in the lanes on the running down? He doesn't rack up a bunch of stats, but teams are running away from him. He will he'll swallow up double teamers. He'll create for his teammates like Jalen Carter. So I think his presence is a lot bigger than people think. So that's why Jordan Davis on here. Alec Pierce, the Colts wide receiver, starting to get a little more love. But yeah, the reason he is on here is because I think people want to talk about Michael Pittman and Josh Downs before Alec Pierce. And yeah, Pittman's had some incredible seasons, not so much last year, but had some incredible seasons, so he's earned that title. And Josh Downs, we know he has a lot of upside, right? He could be the best receiver on the Colts, but reality is Alec Pierce was probably the best receiver on the Colts last year, and I felt like he made some massive plays, like in big moments where, oh, that's the dagger, or the Colts are back in it because of that play that he made down the field, tracking the football and getting in the end zone. Watching a lot of football last year, I felt like that popped up a ton, and he had some monstrous games. So, people know he's solid. People know he's underrated, so we can't rank him super high on this list. But he's a little bit more impactful than people think. And maybe the best receiver on the Colts that people don't really realize. Number 24 most underrated player, my pick for the Falcons, was their receiver Darnell Mooney. A fantastic season last year. I think perfect world, could catch the ball a little more consistently, but a great season. I think people want to label him as the Darnell Mooney from the Chicago Bears still. They're like not fully believing, but he had very, very poor quarterback play there. And almost the second he comes into Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins, who looked good early in the year, but finally a decent quarterback, Mooney's taken off. He's awesome. I thought he made a lot of big impact plays down the field, a lot of home run plays that kind of got the Falcons going a lot. So an underrated receiver that can continue to grow. For the Giants, I'll go with their right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor. It felt like throughout his whole career, he's been known as he's a decent tackle. He's almost been known as like a bridge tackle. You bring him in while you have another young, like a rookie or a second-year young player that might start, and then we have Illuminor maybe kind of get him going or start for now, then get replaced. That's kind of what he's been throughout his career. And when the Giants brought him in, it felt like that's what it was going to be with Evan Neal, but Illuminor's been playing so well. He played well for the Raiders as well, that he's not going to lose his job. He's just a long-time veteran that does not get enough respect. So that's why he's on the list. The Lions, Meek Robertson, their corner. Now, the Lions feels like they have a number of corners now going into this year, so how much is he going to play? But this guy's always been doubted just because he's undersized. I thought he played very well for them. A lot of man coverage, can play inside and outside. He went against some of the team's better receivers as well. I thought he did a really good job shadowing them, even being undersized. Being really sticky in coverage. He had a lights-out game at the end of the year against the Vikings, going against Jefferson Addison. So he's a feisty guy that'll get up in your face, and he just continues to be doubted because he's undersized. They did bring in guys like DJ Reed to have a couple young guys from last year's rookie class, obviously, as well. So there'll be a little bit of a battle there, but a little underrated. Could have went with a newcomer, Roy Lopez, as well. For the Ravens, Travis Jones, their defensive tackle, doesn't dominate the stat sheet, so that's why he's underrated. People don't want to pay attention to it. People don't talk about him, but the Ravens had the best run defense in football last year. They pretty consistently do, and people do not realize how important it is to stop the run. I preach it all the time. You cannot win championship football, and you can't be a great defense if you cannot stop the run. And Travis Jones is a big part of that. He's a and I know they have Matt Abuke, who's their best defensive lineman, but Jones is in there to plug the run, to take on double teams, to fill the gaps, to make sure no one's running by him, and just does not get enough respect for that. It's so important, and it kind of goes unnoticed. Interesting one here with the Saints, Alontae Taylor, young corner. It's interesting because he got ripped a bit last year, and maybe rightfully so. You could argue rightfully so. He actually gave up the single most receptions from corners in all of corners in football last year. So he's got to be better, right? But that's one of the biggest mistakes I think fans and sometimes even analysts make when judging corners. They want to go, all right, how many catches did this guy, give up, but they don't take into account what coverage they are playing. Every defense is playing different coverages all the time, and the Saints are very much so one of the more heavy man coverage defenses. So Alontae Taylor following guys in man's much tougher, at least in my opinion, but I think it should be everyone's opinion. You're going to, if you're doing it snap after snap, you're going to allow some separation here and there. Now factor in how Alontae Taylor plays, what his role was for the Saints. This dude blitzed a lot. He's blitzing. He's covering from the slot. He's covering from the outside. He's blitzing again. He's going back, and he has to go one play after. He has to do a man coverage rep at either corner spot. It's extreme. His job was extremely tiring, extremely difficult. He was a massive blitz factor. I thought he was a very good run defending corner as well, and he can make a play on the ball. So I think he's a little underrated just because of one stat that, yes, doesn't look that great. But the Saints usually load up on corners too, and they didn't have the greatest depth going in this offseason, and they didn't really add much at the position. So they're trusting, on top of Kool-Aid and McKinstry, they're trusting Alontae Taylor. So I think he's a little underrated. The more I'm talking about, he's pretty underrated. Trayvon Walker, former first overall pick, and some people might say he's overrated because he was the first overall pick. But I think that makes him underrated because people don't realize that he was very productive last year, and it's a guy that you kind of can move around the defensive line a little bit as well. So people kind of forget. People just say first overall pick, oh, he better be elite right away. Like, that's really not the case. This was a very, very raw prospect because you're basing it off of traits, but you see the flashes at the same time, but you want to work with those traits. And then Georgia, what they would do with their edge rushers, they really just don't have them. All right, the ball snapped, you go after the quarterback. They don't really do that. They have them kind of sit and hold, contain a little bit, hold the edge, drop in coverage a lot. So it's a lot different. So for many reasons, it makes sense for him to just be get going now, and people don't realize he's already getting going. So that's a good thing. Cowboys guard Tyler Smith coming in at 18. I was tempted to rank Tyler Smith even higher because I'm just a huge fan of his game. Like, he's way better than I ever thought he was going to be. He's a fantastic guard. When he fills in at tackle, he's just as good there. People don't talk about that enough either. I think people... Well, that's the thing. That's why I didn't rank him higher. I think everybody realizes he's pretty damn good, right? So that's why I felt good with the 18 spot here. But I do think he's up there with the best of the best. Maybe he's not... how many guards are you going to call elite? Maybe Lindstrom, that's about it. But is he up there with him and, Miners in that category? Tooney, maybe not quite, but he's right there to me. And I think people are a little lower on him. And then Jerry Jeudy at 17. This is a funny one because am I even underrating Jerry Jeudy? Because when I'm ranking receivers, you got to talk about so many other receivers before Jerry Jeudy. Like, you are doing the same thing out there. Like, everyone's doing the same thing there. But what you don't realize is Jerry Jeudy had one of the better seasons last year for any receiver, and it was a disaster at the quarterback position. The quarterbacks didn't have a ton of time to throw, and he had some monstrous games, some monstrous moments. This guy, you could play on the outside slot, get separation, was a guy that was doubted early in his career because some drops, and all he was worried about was, just making too many moves in his routes, and he's really fixed that. So Jeudy, everyone realizes he's good. Everyone's a little higher on him now, so he's not severely underrated, but I think even with that, maybe we all are still underrating him a little bit. Number 16, most underrated, an interesting one again, because I'm going to go Patriot safety Kyle Duggar, and it's interesting because I actually feel like there might be some people out there that may call him overrated because he was a little hyped. There's been some, he's been a flashy player. Everyone's kind of expecting more. He's about to break out. It hasn't really happened. And he had an off year last year, so everyone's down on him right now. And to me, all that makes him underrated because based on one down year, and before that, this is a player that made some plays that not many safeties can make. Super instinctive, flies around the field, can get downhill, can support the run, can make plays, getting his hands on the ball in coverage. And he was a very small school raw prospect, so it kind of makes sense for him to try to become a little more consistent. And now, you got a great defense around him. You got a better coaching staff compared to last year. I think just because he was a down year last year, people are a little too low right now. At any given time, especially with this staff, the talent he has, I could see Kyle Duggar breaking out even further, and then everyone be going, all right, that's probably a top 10 safety, even though he's maybe not there right now. So that's why I'll go Kyle Duggar for the Patriots. But Seahawks, I'm going to go with a second-year player, Byron Murphy, the second, their first-round pick from Texas, defensive tackle. And it's hard to call second-year players, guys that played 1 year, super underrated. But, man, I think people are down on Murphy. I think it's because people called him either the best, the second, third best defensive player in that draft class. So everyone expected him to be like unreal, flashy, wow. And people go look at the stats and they're underwhelmed. And if you did not watch, it's a load of BS, because if you watched the Seahawks last year, this defense, well, and he missed some games, maybe people knock him for that, but the Seahawks were significantly better with Byron Murphy out there. He was a guy that was creating for the defensive linemen around him, like a rookie that was getting doubled, a rookie that is, stopping the run without making the tackle, getting a lot of interior pressure as well. I think he's right on track. I think this guy has a shot to be a star defensive tackle in the NFL, and there's some really good ones. So I don't think people realize, he didn't have one of the best rookie seasons, compared to the guys that, we're talking like rookie of the year. You have to have a lot of production, unfortunately, for that. But the impact, the presence was way bigger than people think. And then Nick Bonitto was a tough one, too, because I think everyone realizes Nick Bonitto is very solid. But nobody wants to put him in the top 10 edge rusher conversation, and I want to put him there. I definitely do. And I think it's because he isn't your traditional style edge rusher, or with the, he's not the prototype. He doesn't have the measurables, the size perhaps. And people just go like, yeah, who's the guy that just gets the most pressure off the edge? And people are kind of almost underrating sacks at this point. He racked up the sacks, but what other thing people don't look at is what else they do. This guy drops in coverage a lot. He can play off the ball if you need him to. So he's just so important and such a weapon to the Broncos defense. You could have won with a couple Broncos. I think Ben Powers is pretty underrated. People kind of catching up on Quinn Miners. You can go with Bonitto's partner in Jonathan Cooper, the other side, off the edge. So Broncos had some. Trevon Moehrig, the safety from now with the Carolina Panthers, was with the Raiders, and he was a hyped up prospect, right? And then he was underwhelming right away. Like Javon Holland was taking off right away, so everyone was knocking Moehrig, and he was. I feel like in most people's eyes, he was like nearing bust status, and that actually might have been true. He was kind of. And it's a little harsh, but he was kind of getting there. But I've been saying it for years. Like when you watched him at TCU, he played every alignment pretty much, but where he was best was in the slot, in the box area. And the Raiders drafted him as a free safety, and that's where he was playing early in his career. The last year, he played a lot more in the box, and he was awesome, and people did not talk about it at all. And I just hope that's kind of where Carolina plays him more. I mean, use him as a versatile piece, but I feel like that's what the plan is. And he's really good at super good run support, getting downhill. It's exactly what the Panthers need. And he can make plays at the back end as well. You can line him in different spots. But I don't think people realize, I think there's probably some people out there who are like, oh, that guy was nearing bust status and he got that contract, but they don't realize when he's in the right role, he played outstanding last year. Garrett Williams, the corner of the Arizona Cardinals, and they do have a number of corners looking at after the draft, to fight for some spots. But Garrett Williams is a very solid nickel corner, and I feel like he's going to keep that job because he's played it so well. And he was not coming out of college because, he's very good at Syracuse, but he was a little on the slower side, but that's just not really showing up in his home in that in nickel spot. Yeah, he's probably not an outside corner, but he plays in the inside at such a high level, such an impact. He's definitely the most consistent corner for the Arizona Cardinals. So the nickel corners definitely need some love. He was great, when on the field last year. And number 11, George Karlaftis. He was kind of a bigger name, and people realize he's good, but I think people want to call him, a bottom half, if you're ranking the top 32 edge rushers, probably towards the bottom there, and I think that's way off. I think this guy is way better than people think. He just shows up in big-time moments. What people don't realize with edge rushers sometimes is, we talk about Bonitto, they don't realize like how good he's dropping coverage. With George Karlaftis, they don't talk, when edge rushers, you just talk about pressure. You don't realize run defense. He's incredible stopping the run, but he gets pressure. He was up there for the NFL in pressure and in sacks and big-time moments as well. Such an important piece to the Chiefs in their pass rush and their run defense. So I think he's easily a top 16 edge rusher, and he's still young, got upside. He could make his way into a top 10 edge rusher. And I think by most, a lot of people out there would not give him that credit. Number 10, we're in the top 10, the most underrated players in the league. Titans safety, Amani Hooker. Not a big name at all. Do not hear his name come up at all. And this is A very underrated safety that him coming out of Iowa, you thought maybe he was a slot corner and that's where he'd have to play. But the Titans, well, obviously he can play in the back end. He can play, to me, he could play free, strong safety or in the slot. But he's made such an incredible impact for the Tennessee Titans when he's out there on the field, and he was a big-time playmaker last year. And we even see another long-time safety like Quandre Diggs saying Amani Hooker is very underrated to a player that people just need to watch more closely, and I could not agree more because he's been actually, and the Titans have had some struggles in the secondary recently, but he's been a bright spot there. It is very interesting because they bring in Xavier Woods, which I think Hooker's a lot better than. You could use both, but they draft Kevin Winston Jr., who played more free safety for Penn State, but just on his play style, you feel he is a strong safety. So I wonder, they were using 3 corners out there. I wonder if they use 3 safeties. I'm very curious to see what they do. But Amani Hooker is not a big name at all. You barely hear his name, and the guy is way better than everyone thinks. Number 9, a big name here, Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is severely underrated. People are ripping that contract. There's some quarterbacks that people just love to rip into. Like anytime Purdy throws an interception, it's like the end of the world. I don't know why that is for some quarterbacks. Maybe because he was doubted even as a prospect. He was the last pick of the draft. People might be going, how? They just can't comprehend how he's good. But he's good, and I feel like he's actually getting better, whether the stats show it or not. He's always towards the top of the NFL, in QBR, which is, I'm not a stats guy, but that's a very important one. He escapes pressure way better than people think. He can keep plays alive way better than people think. I feel like he's getting more accurate, able to make bigger plays as time goes on. He's just a guy that's kind of just getting going. So I think he could actually be, I think he's already a very solid quarterback. I think he could be a special quarterback. He's got to be a little more consistent. There's some games against some tougher schemes that he does struggle a little bit with. But I don't know, like the last year or more, people just are looking for every opportunity to rip Brock Purdy, and they're laughing at that contract. I think he's a lot better, but people don't talk about the upside a lot more than people think. The top 8 most underrated players, in my opinion, if we use one for every single team. So there you have it. The Bears, nickel corner. Those nickel corners do not get enough love. Kyler Gordon had a very solid year for the Chicago Bears last year. He recently got a contract extension, and it was one of those situations where some people were like, who? Like, which is crazy because how well he played, but he was actually a pretty damn good prospect. It was him and Trent McDuffie, one of the very best, one of the elite corners of football right now. They were McDuffie was a little bit better, but they were equally as dominant of corners for the Washington Huskies. So it makes sense that Gordon is good. And maybe it took him a little bit longer to get going, but he found his home at that nickel spot. He is damn good. He's really good in run support, identifying plays, getting downhill, making a splash play, big time hits, forcing incompletions from that. And he took a major step up last year. It just feels like he's just getting going, so he can continue to climb. So yeah, it was just funny that he got that extension, and it was a little pricey. I thought it was well deserved. And then some people were like, what? But no, this guy can play, and he's growing still. I'm going to go Jordan Love of the Packers, number 7. And this is going to be one of those, I'm guessing, controversial ones of this video, because there's people out there that want to say Jordan Love's overrated. And I live in Chicago, so I hear, Chicago sports radio, and it's the people around me talking a lot. And so maybe that plays a part of me saying Jordan Love is underrated, because it's all I hear around here is like people around here legit think Jordan Love sucks. They think he stinks. They think he's bad. He's overrated. You wish he didn't end the year the way he did. He did play against the Super Bowl champs, the best defense in football. He's got to take care of the football a little bit better. He gets a little wild with it, but Jordan Love, a couple things here. Week 1, he started off with an injury, and then he tried to come back from that too early. I don't want to make excuses for him, but imagine your quarterback getting injured week 1, even though he comes back. Like, things aren't 100% right? It's not smooth. So I think that plays a factor. He still played very well last year. He actually avoided sacks at an elite level last year. And a lot of time it's not really him escaping or breaking the sacks. He can do that, but he's just really good at scanning the field and getting the ball out on time and just maneuvering in the pocket to buy himself more time, at a very, the way some of the best NFL quarterbacks do it. So Nobody talks about that. Like, he had an incredible season in that category. Obviously, he can make all the throws. I feel like he still has an enormous amount of upside, because I do think, not this past year, the year before, the way he ended it was incredible. But the beginning part of that season, I thought he was kind of bad at times. But the point is, he grew so much. He just disrupted a little bit with week 1 last year with that injury, but he still has so much upside. I feel like he's a much better quarterback than people think, and there are people out there that legit think that he's bad, and that's what makes him high on this underrated list. The Bills corner, Christian Benford, and he's starting to get a little more love. So I'm like, how high do I put him? Because people realize he's solid, but that's not a household cornerback name, and he should be a household cornerback name. This was a raw prospect out of Villanova, small school, not supposed to be much. You take a shot on him, maybe he becomes something, and he's already something, and something very, very good. And again, people are starting to realize it, but it's just not. You talk household corners. I'm not going to try to put him in the elite corners like Patrick Surtain, Trent McDuffie, Derek Stan. I'm not going to put him up there. But even after that, you have your Jalen Johnsons, your Sauce Gardners. There's a number of corners in there. There's a long list of guys that are household names, and he is just not a big name at all. And that's because it's not because of the NFL, it's the chatter around the NFL. It's the fans, it's the media, and I think he deserves to be a household name, and I think he could take another step up this year and be a stud player. The Vikings linebacker, Blake Cashman, he impressed me a ton last year. He ended up being a lot better than I expected. He did miss some games, but you look at that Vikings defense, which was considered pretty good. You look at with and without him, a significant difference. This defense needed Blake Cashman as much as anybody on that defense. Super instinctive. He was awesome versus the pass, in zone coverage, reading quarterback's eyes, making plays on the ball. Fantastic getting downhill, stopping the run, and all of a sudden has became, at this point of his career, a major blitz factor, a fantastic blitz factor. And you have to be for Brian Flores' defense. You can't be a factor in that category. You're going to lose your job. So in every single category, this guy was fantastic. I was not expecting him to be that good. He was that good, that important. The presence and the production was there. So to me, everything I just said puts him on this list. But you think about the top NFL linebackers, there's not a long list of the super great ones. You got Fred Warner at the very top for sure. You have Roquan Smith. Zach Bond kind of coming out of nowhere making names for. I think Blake Cashman's up there. Based on what I saw last year and him growing and everything that's to his game, I think he's up there towards the top. And I don't think people are giving him that love yet, but I think people started to realize how good he was last year. Another linebacker, a young underrated one from the Chargers, Daiyan Henley, was fantastic last year for the Chargers. Was a big reason that defense kind of took off and was much better than it was expected to be. And then it really looked on how it looked on paper as well. And they had their struggles with injuries throughout at the cornerback position, the secondary. So other guys like this had to really hold them up, but Henley, I felt like was a very likable prospect when he came out. Remember, he was a safety that was turned to linebacker throughout his career, going from Nevada to Washington State. I think people liked him. He was flashy, but given that, and nobody's talking about his season last year. Like, literally nobody was talking about it. He was fantastic. He's awesome in coverage. He's flying around the football field. I mean, this guy has a bright future. Definitely one to watch. And it's just, I like picking out these underrated, younger, small name players that are just way better than people realize. Like, people got to start talking about these guys. So that's why he is higher on the list. And Kalijah Kancey, next up, top 3 most underrated player for me. They're defensive tackle, young defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. Another guy that was, I felt like, loved by many as a prospect because of his ability to get sacks, just get to the quarterback, get pressure. His knocks coming out was, will he be able to stop the run? He's not that great at it coming out. And does he rely on winning off the snap, making people miss. Basically, if he's being blocked, can he shed the block? Does he rely on the first step, the explosiveness? So those are the questions I had, even though it was obvious that he can get after the quarterback, and he has some nifty moves. He's explosive off the ball. When the Buccaneers took him, I thought it was a little surprising. I thought ultimately he would end up going at the very, very end of the first. If anything, the Buccaneers take him, and the Buccaneers value defensive tackles. They value stopping the run as much as anyone. They always thrive to be one of the best run-stopping defenses. In his rookie season, I thought those negatives kind of showed a little bit, even though he had a pretty good rookie season for Calijah Kancey. But in stopping the run, I thought he struggled a little bit. But last year, I was so impressed with Calijah Kancey. He was better than I expected him to be, way better than I expected him to be, even though I knew he could do some good things. But I thought he improved very much stopping the run. Collapsing the pocket, shedding blocks. I thought he played very well. Him and Vita Vea were awesome in the middle. The Buccaneers had one of the better interior defensive lines. They stopped the run at a high level, and it's not just because of Vita Vea. Other players have to do the part, and I thought Kancey did that, and he's underrated because people don't talk about that much. But I see Pro Football Focus takes and grades on him, and they just think he was awful last year, and I wasn't thrilled with his rookie season besides getting some pressure, but last year I just saw something completely different. This was a complete disruptor. He's way ahead of schedule. He's way better than I thought he was going to be in other categories that he needed to work on. So he comes in at number 3. Zach Sieler, the Miami Dolphins defensive tackle, at number 2, and a little bit bigger of a name than some of these other guys on the list, but for some reason, this guy is not a household name. This guy isn't a everyday name, a big name, and it's just absolutely ridiculous for so many reasons. Well, one, I know there's a lot of good defensive tackles, but he's up there for one of the really, really good defensive tackles of this league. He's very versatile. You can move him around to different spots. Christian Wilkins did the same thing, and that it kind of goes into that as well. Wilkins leaves. You think the Dolphins are going to take a major, major, major hit losing him, and yeah, maybe they miss him a little bit, but no, the Dolphins interior started off a little slow last year. They were kind of bad very early in the year, but they ended up being very, very good. Now they add Kenneth Grant to that. I'm excited about that. And it's because all of that is because a guy like this. He was so good at everything last year. All different alignments, shedding blocks. You watch the guy shed blocks. I mean, with quickness, with power, with the hand strength. Getting in the backfield, stopping a run, getting sacked. I mean, he was super productive getting the quarterback down, not talked about, just constantly disrupting in the backfield. But again, I keep going back. I see him line up pretty much every alignment, even line up at nose tackle at times, at 3 technique, over the guard. He was good with Christian Wilkins, but he's just taking even more of a step, becoming more of this big, important player because he has to. He knows it's on him. He has to do it, and he's a big-time defensive tackle and a big-time should be a big-time name. And it was right away when I thought of this video, I'm like, he's going to be number 1. Like, that's number 1, but so close at the same time, people do realize he's good. He's just not nowhere near the big name that he should be because media and fans don't talk about it now. But I'm going to go Quentin Lake, the LA Rams versatile defensive back, at number 1. And it is a little tough because he had one good year, but I thought I was very impressed last year. And you could see him coming along before that, of course. So it's not like he didn't play good before that, but so impressed with him last year. He played 100% of the Rams' defensive snaps. 100%. Outside of quarterbacks, offensive linemen, look at just defensive players. I want to say there's only like 3 or 4 that did that in the entire league. He is one of them. He played outstanding last year in big moments, big games, saw him in the playoffs, dominated Minnesota in the first round of the playoffs. But you look at some of the most valuable defensive backs, safeties we'll say, in today's NFL, there's some that are like they sit out there in free agency or they don't get paid nearly as much as you thought, and there's some that get paid what? You got paid that much? The ones that are super valuable in today's NFL are those that can align in different positions, that can play multiple positions. I think specifically the guys that play the normal position and in the slot, and that's exactly what Quentin Lake is. He played a handful of snaps at that slot corner position, but he played a handful at free safety, but a lot of split safety with Cameron Curl. They have Cameron Kinchens who can play back. He can kind of do both as well, slot and split safety, but Kinchens that is. But Lake played their most snaps, 100% snaps, then Curl, and then Kinchens. But Lake, I thought, was fantastic. He's a very valuable player to the LA Rams, where he can align, ability to come up and stop the run, ability to make plays through the air, pretty damn locked down and covered. So it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a video of guys that I'm just impressed, and typically guys that I'm very impressed with are guys that I don't expect to be that impressed with. So it's kind of a common theme here. Lake, Cansey, Henley, Cashman, guys like Benford are ahead of schedule, and then you got a mixture of guys that, people don't really know their names too much, and they should. And then you got a handful of guys that people, like, for some reason want to rip them and think they stink. Guys like Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, a couple of quarterbacks. I almost think Dak Prescott's almost in there too. Like, people just talk like Dak is like bad, but there are a lot of people that think he's really good. But there you have it. This is definitely going to vary by opinion. Like, this is definitely one of the very much so like opinion-based things. Like, so I'm very curious to see. I do want to get some fan perspectives here in a second, but I want to see your guys' takes in the comments as well. But I got some ex-subscribers' takes on underrated NFL players. And here are those fans' takes from Vitor. Zach Sealer, who we just talked about, one of the most underrated players in the league. James Conner's a good pick as well. He was so important, such a big-time presence for the Cardinals last year. I mean, their offense got going at times only because of James Conner, it felt like. He has Amani Hooker as well. I had him in the top 10. Drake London. I think people are starting to I think at this time last year, I would have called Drake London severely underrated. I think people are kind of catching on now. A lot of options from Aiden Weingartner. Love that. Hunter Henry. It's a pretty good pick. Oh, I forgot Josh Palmer at the top. Hunter Henry's a pretty good pick just because he's been around for a bit, kind of been the same guy for a while. People don't realize he could still ball out. Justin Fields, I almost would say Justin Fields a little overrated just because of his running ability. People kind of get a little too crazy when they see quarterbacks do that, and they think he's better than he is. He needs to prove a little more as a passer. Cedric Tillman's a guy that could get going this year. Pat Freiermuth, Josh Downs, Trayvon Walker. We had Roger McCreary for the Titans. Nick Bonito we have. I'm trying to find. Jacoby Myers a good pick. Najee Harris actually a good pick too. I like the Deion Henley better for the Chargers, so I couldn't have gone Najee Harris. But Najee Harris is a guy that kind of gets ripped every year for not being more than what he is, but he's consistently a 1,000-yard rusher, has some beast moments. Javonte Williams, a little underrated. I mean, overall, he hasn't played where we want him to play at, but I think he could play much better. Jaquan Brisker, Tucker Kraft, maybe a little underrated. Kyle Pitts, probably a debatable one. Rico Dowdle's a good pick. Shaheed. Juwan Jennings, really good pick as well. And Kenneth Walker, some good picks in there. KEU, there's a Kyler Gordon pick. Braxton Jones, Tank Bigsby, Jaquan Brisker. I like the Kyler Gordon one. I went with him pretty high. Ian, Cesar Ruiz. That's a pretty good pick there. Jabril Peppers a good one. He didn't play much last year. I thought about him, though. Jamel Dean. Yeah, if he stays healthier, he'd probably get more love. Javonte Williams, another one. Jerry Judy's a good one. Charles Cross, pretty decent. The Seahawks left tackle. Big ounce. Of course, I'm going to be biased with my team. The Texans DBs from 2024 class are already underrated. So, yeah, I had Kamari Lassiter as well. Kalen Bullock. Yeah, my only thing, Kalen Bullock had his ups and downs last year. Big-time ups, though, with the playmaking ability. But my only thing is they have so many options, and they keep adding more options. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being one of them, who could be a little underrated himself. Actually, he is. He makes some big-time plays. So does Bullock play typically like that? You like to see increase the snaps. So where does that go? But it's a kind of a good problem to have if you're a Texans fan. You got a million stud. I just spit everywhere. Defensive backs. Fennec, Quinn Miners. Yeah, I think Miners was underrated maybe going into last year. I think now people are kind of giving him respect, but maybe it's maybe one of those cases where, because I personally would rank him, I want to say number 2 guard in football after Lindstrom is what I want to say. Maybe people wouldn't rank him that high. I don't know. And the Broncos' entire defensive line. Yeah, I said Nick Bonito. You could go Jonathan Cooper. You could go Zach Allen as well. Khalil Shakir. I think going into last year, yes, I think he started to get a little more love. Ivan Pace, so he went with the Vikings' other linebacker. I don't know if I'm a Vikings fan. I'm trying to figure, is Ivan Pace, he was underrated like in the draft. Like this dude was a stud, and he went undrafted, very underrated. And then He gets a lot of love from the Vikings fan base just because it's a guy you root for. So that's why I'm not wanting to say he's underrated. He could be better in coverage for sure. One-on-one tackles are a little hit or miss. But he's flashy. He's such a good blitzer. He's got a lot of upside. Jacoby Myers seems to be a common pick. It's a good one. AJ Terrell's another one. It's like people realize he's good, but people are really hesitant to call him like even a top 10 or 15 corner, which I feel like he most definitely is. A lot of corners, though. A lot of good corners, but pretty good one. Baker, yeah, I think before last year he probably was. Maybe not anymore. Bucky, I don't think Bucky's underrated. People like are blown away with this rookie season. He's got a few bucks in here. I like the Kalijah Cansey pick. Yaya Diaby could have been another one. Romeo Doubs, Jacoby Myers. A lot of Jacoby Myers picks. Yeah, Cole Kmet, Montez Sweat. I don't think Sweat is underrated. You know, maybe he's more over if I had to pick. Cole Kmet, I'd say underrated. TJ Edwards, Kyler Gordon. There's another one I like that pick. Josh Metellus, a pretty good one for the Vikings. He just does a bit of everything for them. So very much an impact. Gavin Mallard. Calvin Ridley, that's a pretty good one. Yeah, Ridley started to really go nuts at the end of last year. I felt like he's still very solid. Noah Gray's a good one for the Chiefs as well. I had people kind of overshadowed by Travis Kelce, really solid. Monty Hooker was a top 10 one for me. I love that pick. Grover Stewart, that's what I didn't think about. That's a good pick. Maybe a few years ago I'd been more proper because he's been a really consistent, really solid nose tackle. Maybe not quite as good today than he was a few years ago, but Peter Skoronski. Yeah, I think everyone's kind of waiting for a little bit more, but he's had his rookie year was like a portion of it was really good and a portion of it not so much. And last year, he said the last 8 games, he's got to put kind of a full season together. He'll do that. Remember, he switched positions. So a lot of good picks. Oh, is there more here? I don't know why that was under that. BTJ season, could name more from Jags. Trayvon Walker. Aluokun's a good pick. I mean, just consistently consistent tackle machine. Alex Highsmith, I think another one of those guys a few years ago was, and now everyone kind of loves him. Christian Benford, we had him. Nick Benito, we had him. Jaden Reed, that could be a pretty good pick. It's just people kind of view him as a gadget. You could argue at times he disappears. He's kind of a gadget guy, but man, he's got more in him. I could see it. Mikey Sainer still pretty good pick because he actually could have been and wasn't in that defensive rookie of the year conversation. Not that he would have been my pick, but Tyler Algier, it's a pretty good one as well because there are times, not so much because Bijan really took off last year, more the second half of the season, maybe a little bit before that. But there were times before that where it's like Bijan should be light years better than Algier, but Algier is looking a little bit better right now. So maybe he doesn't get enough love for that. Michael Wilson, versatile receiver from the Cardinals, could be a pick. Could go Greg Dortch, other Cardinals receivers. So good picks here. Making me think. Definitely making me think. This is a fun video to do. Let me know all of your guys' thoughts in the comments who your picks would be. But I liked picking one for every team, and I thought to rank them. Let's rank them. Who are the most underrated players in the league? So there you have it. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Join us for other content. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.